As you can probably tell by the pile of reels here on my workbench, it's getting to be about that time of year where I start servicing all my reels. But before I do, I'd like to take a minute to talk about how to get some more life throughout the year on your reels that you're using, especially your casting reels that you're using for surface iron, poppers, big hard baits, things like that. You know, in the past, this size reel, which is a Penn Fathom 25 Narrow, had always been a reel that was suited for, fish up to maybe 30 pounds, yellows, school-sized tuna, things like that. But over the last few years, with these bigger fish around eating the poppers, now this is suddenly a reel that you're going to catch 100-pound plus fish on. Well, the reel is set up to handle that amount of stress. Obviously, it's got plenty of drag, 20-something pounds. One of the things is when we fight these fish, a lot of that, we're actually damaging our reels by improper fighting technique. And I'm going to talk about that for a second here. So I have, imagine you have a bigger fish hook, or even like a good-sized yellowtail or whatever. And you've got it up and down and you're pulling on it. Now, you can see by this position that I've got most of my stress here on my left arm, but as you get tired, you start to pull with your right arm as well. Now you're pulling with both, and what's happening is you're pulling against the one-way roller bearing in your reel handle. What this one-way roller bearing does is it prevents the handle from snapping back at all. If you remember the older reels like Newell's or the older Penns, they had a little bit of back play. Well, it would slip back until the dog engaged, which stops the handle from going backwards. And while all these reels still have dogs, the Penn Fathom actually has two, it has a one-way roller bearing in here that gives you infinite anti-reverse, so no matter where you stop, it's not going to spin backwards. This one-way roller bearing is basically a metal nut with a plastic cage inside of it that holds small metal bars that rest up against the shaft and only allow it to turn one direction. And while those things are plenty strong to stop 25 pounds of drag from coming off a reel, when you're actively pulling on a fish without paying attention, you're pulling back on this handle, you're using your leverage, especially at certain handle positions, like this right here. If you're pulling this way, you're putting a lot more stress than 25 pounds on that, and what you're doing is you're damaging that one-way roller bearing. And a real obvious indicator of that roller bearing having a problem is if you have your own boat, you get done fishing, you clip your jig behind your reel seat, you put it in the rod holder, you start running, and suddenly that jig's loose and flying around everywhere. That's because that one-way roller bearing is slipping and allowing the spool to turn backwards. Another thing that can happen is when you're under a lot of pressure, it can skip and your handle will snap back a quarter turn or even more if until the dog's engaged. You get hit on the hand, or you can lose your fish over it, making a backlash, your reel spinning backwards, or even get injured. So, if you've been fishing and you notice these things happening, you really need to change that bearing out. On some reels, you can buy the bearing separately. On the Penn, it's mounted into the side plate. You can actually see it in there. I don't know how clear that is, but it's a plastic cage with metal bars in there that prevent it from turning backwards. You need to buy the entire assembly. Their side plate is not very expensive, so it's not that big of a deal, and it's actually not that much more than buying the bearing itself for other reels that I've done work on. And getting this one-way roller bearing is pretty easy to do. You know, you just go to What I do is I download a parts diagram for what all my different reels that I have, and you can just go in there, look up the part number, write down whatever it is, and then call your reel manufacturer. Penn has it on their website. There's a number you can call and make a list of parts I need. Call them. They're real helpful. The parts are all very affordable, and the shipping's fast and cheap. And I'll just do the service myself. And while I'm not going to show you how to service a reel in this video, I have another article that I'm going to link to in the actual article talking about that'll show you how to do that yourself. But I'm a big believer in servicing your own reels, because most of the time if you're fishing a casting reel and you're taking decent care of it and rinsing it off, the only thing you're going to need to replace at the end of the season is your drag washers. Clean up the inside, re-grease everything, put it back together. If it's noisy casting, you might have to change out a bearing or clean a bearing. But it's usually real simple, and it seems kind of a waste to pay somebody you don't know 20 or 30 bucks to go in there and maybe not do a great job. And things like the one-way roller bearing, they're never going to notice that because they don't see your jig flopping off your reel, your handle spinning backwards slightly. And whatever brand of reel you're fishing, if you've been pulling backwards on your handle, I recommend changing out your one-way roller bearing in your handle before you go fishing next season.